What does perfection mean to you? Would you consider anyone you know to be perfect? Nowadays, there are so many things that society tells us we have to do in order to be considered perfect. We can't be too much of this or that, too tall or too short, too prideful or too humble. With all these different ideals being placed upon us, it really does take a toll on our self-confidence. Especially as teenagers, still trying to figure out our identities, we're extremely vulnerable to this. Today, I'm going to be sharing about how I managed to gain self-confidence as a teenager, because frankly, it's a skill that most of us lack. And you're probably sitting there, wondering how I gained this, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. So before I begin, let me tell you guys a little bit about myself. So when I was 2, I moved from Florida to Bangkok, and my parents enrolled me in a relatively small kindergarten at an international school here. I stayed at that school from kindergarten all the way up until the 5th grade. And honestly, the environment at that school was quite stale. Each year, there were barely any new students, and I barely experienced any significant change. So I was always comfortable. Admittedly, I was a very happy kid. But the thing is, I was just way too comfortable in that environment. Now fast forward over to my first year at this new middle school I was transferring over to. I remember talking with my 2 best friends at the time about the 3 of us all moving over to this new school together. And I thought everything was going to work out just fine. But unfortunately, 5th graders aren't very reliable and can't really control their schooling situations, so I ended up being the only one who transferred over. I remember walking in on the first day, and I had no idea who I was outside of the environment of my old school. I was so scared. I remember walking in on the first day, and I don't think I spoke to anyone aside from saying here during attendance. So at that point in my life, I was probably lowest in terms of my self-confidence. I had no idea who I was. So how did I get from that person to the person I am today, literally on a stage talking about myself? Well, I'm going to be giving you my very simplified 4-step guide to self-confidence. The first step is to spend time focusing on yourself, because how are you supposed to be confident in yourself if you don't even know who you are? So make an effort to take time out of your day to better yourself. Start doing things that you enjoy. Start separating yourself from people to figure out who you are outside of your little bubble of friends. For me, this all happened when the world was shut down last March. I had so much spare time on my hands, and admittedly, I did waste quite a bit of it, but eventually I put it to use. I started doing things just for myself. I started to work out, to eat healthier, to do skincare, to study more. I started to find things I enjoyed doing, like cooking and baking, and spending a lot of time doing it. After all that, I learned to enjoy being by myself and just enjoy my own company. At the end of the day, we're going to be stuck with ourselves for the rest of our lives, so you have to make sure you're happy with who you are. The second step is to stop caring what others think of you, because seeking other people's validation is honestly so pointless and just such a waste of time. Of course, this is easier said than done, but it's simple really. The less you care what others think of you, the happier you're going to be. Imagine you're a dancer on a stage and someone criticizes you in the middle of your performance. You wouldn't stop your entire show and get off the stage to argue with them. You would just keep going because it's about you, it's not about them. I remember I used to care so much what others thought of me. Someone could be thinking about their test from last period and I just assumed they were judging the way that I looked. I remember reading somewhere that no one really cares about you as much as you care about yourself. Everyone is just too consumed with their own lives and themselves that they don't even notice you half the time. The third step is to surround yourself with encouragement. Everything that you surround yourself with affects the way that you feel. The biggest thing being the people you surround yourself with. They really reflect upon who you are and where your values lie. I vividly remember when one of my coaches basically told me that I wasn't good enough to be part of the team. What had happened was we went away one weekend for a tournament and everyone got to play at one point or another except for me. I sat on the bench the entire time. And it really made me question myself, why wasn't I good enough? Why was I wasting all this time? Why did I even join? I thought the fact that I showed up to these different practices and tournaments showed that I was dedicated, right? So I went to talk to my coach about it, and to sum up the conversation that we had, they basically told me that I could just quit the team and it wouldn't really matter. At the time, hearing those really harsh words, it did hurt me. I remember walking out of that conversation, holding back the tears in my eyes, and once we got down to lunch and saw my friends, I just started crying, Now, I'm not telling you the story for you to pity me. I'm just telling how harsh words of criticism can really hurt you. So now, I try my best to surround myself with those who truly want the best for me and are always supporting me, and distance myself from those who do not. And you have to have self-respect for yourself to do that. The last step, and arguably the most important step, is to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. Say yes to more things. If you constantly keep yourself comfortable, just like how most of my childhood was, then you'll never be able to grow and better yourself. So constantly do things that excite you and sometimes even scare you, because that's the only way you're going to end up growing and feeling alive. The way I see it, there are two ways in which you can approach this societal standard of perfection. The first way is the safer option, to do the things society tells you should be doing. But by putting yourself in this small confined box, you risk losing your identity and your authenticity. On the other hand, the route that lots of people end up choosing is to not necessarily conform to society's standards, but just do things that are true to yourself. If you choose the first option, sure, you're going to be successful and happy with yourself to a certain extent, but there will constantly be this big what-if hanging over your head. If we just take a step back and think about it, in the moment we can get so caught up in our own heads, I'm gonna look different, they're gonna judge me. But really, what value are we adding to the world if we're all the same? I mean, we're literally just one person in this world of 8 billion people in this huge universe. So why would we want to be like anyone else? So that's how my journey to self-confidence was. I started to focus on myself. I started to stop caring what others thought of me. I started to surround myself with encouragement. And lastly, started doing things outside of my comfort zone. The fact that I'm on the stage right now just proves that last point. The harsh reality is that in society's standards, we're never going to be good enough. And that's why it's so important that we're just confident in ourselves. Self-confidence is truly one of the greatest skills you can have, because it opens you up to becoming happier, to becoming more successful, and gaining more opportunities. At the end of the day, we're going to be stuck with ourselves. So let me ask you this. Are you really happy with who you are? If not, start right